Chapter 13 Raid. The ships came swarming out of space in perfect coordination. An entire wing struck directly at the observatory. In response to this, almost inevitably, the defending forces on Ceres concentrated their power at that point. The attack was not pressed full force. Ship after ship dived downward to launch energy beams at an obviously impregnable shield. None took the risky step of trying to blast the underground power plants, the location of which they must have known. Government ships took the space and ground batteries opened up. In the end, the two pirate ships were destroyed when their shields broke down and they glared into glowing vapor. Another one, its energy reserves down to a trickle, was almost captured in the eventual pursuit. It was blown up at the last moment, probably by its own crew. Even during the attack, some of the defenders suspected it was to be a feint. Later, of course, they knew that for a fact. While the observatory was engaged, 3 ships landed on the asteroid 100 miles away. Pirates disembarked with hand weapons and portable blasting cannon, attacked the residential airlocks from flitting space sleds. The locks were blasted open and space-suited pirates swarmed down the corridors from which air emptied. The upper reaches of the corridor were factories and offices, the occupants of which had been evacuated at the first alarm. Their place was taken by space-suited members of the local militia who fought bravely, but were no match for the professionals of the pirate fleet. In the lower depths, in the peaceful apartments of Ceres, the noise of blasting battle sounded. Calls for help were sent out. Then, almost as suddenly as they came, the pirates retreated. When they left, the men of Ceres counted their casualties. 15 Syrians were dead, and many more hurt in one way or another, as against the bodies of 5 pirates. Damage to property was very high. "And one man," Conway explained furiously to Lucky when the latter arrived, "is missing. Only, he's not on the list of inhabitants, and we've been able to keep his name out of the news reports." Lucky found Ceres the focus of almost hysterical excitement now that the raid was over. It had been the first attack on an important terrestrial center by any enemy in a generation. He had to pass 3 inspections before being allowed to land. He sat in the council office with Conway and Henry and said bitterly, "So Hansen is gone. That's what it boils down to." "I'll say this for the old hermit," said Henry. "He had guts. When the pirates penetrated, he insisted on getting into his suit, grabbing up a blaster, and going up there with the militia." "We weren't short on militia," said Lucky. "If he had stayed down here, he would have done us a much greater service. How is it you didn't stop him? Under the circumstances, was he a person to be allowed to do such a thing?" Lucky Starr's usually even voice contained a repressed anger. Conway said patiently, "We weren't with him. The guard we left in charge had to report for militia duty. Hansen insisted on joining him, and the guard decided he could do both duties at once that way. Fight the pirates and guard the hermit." "But he didn't guard the hermit." "Under the circumstances, he can scarcely be blamed. The guard saw Hansen last charging a pirate. Next thing he knew, there was no one in sight and the pirates were retreating. Hansen's body hasn't been recovered. The pirates must have him dead or alive." "So they must," said Lucky. "Let me tell you something. Let me tell you exactly what a bad mistake this was. I'm certain that the whole attack on Ceres was arranged simply to capture Hansen." Henry reached for his pipe. "You know, Hector," he said to Conway, "I'm almost tempted to go along with Lucky on that. The attack on the observatory was a miserable one, an obvious fake attempt to draw off our defenses. Getting Hansen was the only thing they did accomplish." Conway snorted. "One possible information leak like the Hermit isn't worth risking 30 ships." "That's the whole point," said Lucky vehemently. "Right now it might be. I told you about the asteroid I was on, the kind of industrial plant it must have been. Suppose they're almost at the point where they're ready to make the big push. Suppose Hansen knows the exact date for when the push is scheduled. Suppose he knows the exact method." "Then why hasn't he told us?" demanded Conway. "Maybe," said Henry, "he's waiting to use it as material with which to buy his own immunity. We never did have a chance to really discuss that question with him. You've got to admit, Hector, that if he had that kind of key information, any number of ships would have been worth the risk, and you've got to admit that Lucky is probably right about their being ready for the big push." Lucky looked sharply from one to the other. "Why do you say that, Uncle Gus? What happened?" "Tell him, Hector," said Henry. "Why tell him anything?" growled Conway. "I'm tired of his one-man trips. We want to go to Ganymede." "What's on Ganymede?" asked Lucky coldly. As far as he knew, there was little or nothing on Ganymede to interest anyone. It was Jupiter's largest moon, but the very nearness of Jupiter made it difficult to maneuver spaceships, so that space travel in its vicinity was unprofitable. "Tell him," said Henry. "Look," said Conway. "Here it is. We knew Hansen was important. The reason we didn't have him under tighter observation, the reason Gus and I weren't there ourselves, was that 2 hours before the pirate attack a report came in from the Council to the effect that there was evidence that the Syrian forces had landed on Ganymede." "What kind of evidence?" "Type beams, subetheric signals that had been penetrated. It's a long story, but the nub of it was that, more by accident than anything else, a few scraps of code were picked up. The experts say it's Syrian code, and certainly there isn't anything terrestrial on Ganymede that's capable of putting out signals on a beam that tight. Gus and I are going to take Hansen and return to Earth when the pirates attacked. And that's it. Right now we've still got to return to Earth. With Syrians on the scene, there may be war at any time." Lucky said, "I see. Well, before we go to Earth, there's one thing I'd like to check on. Do we have motion pictures of the pirate attack? I'm supposing the defenses of Ceres weren't so disorganized that pictures weren't taken." "They've been taken. How do you expect them to help?" "I'll tell you that after I see them." Men in the uniform of the fleet, wearing high-rank insignia, projected the top-secret motion pictures of what later became known in history as the Ceres raid.
27 ships attacked the observatory. Is that right?"
asked Lucky. "Right," said a commander. "No more than that."
"Good. Now let's see if I have the rest of the facts straight. 2 of the ships were accounted for during the fight, and a third during the pursuit. The remaining 24 got away, but you have 1 or more shots of each of them in retreat."
The commander smiled. "If you're implying that any of them landed on Ceres and are still here, you're quite wrong."
"As far as those 27 ships are concerned, perhaps. But 3 more ships did land on Ceres, and their crew attacked the Massey airlock. Where are the pictures of those?"
"Unfortunately, we didn't get many of those," admitted the commander comfortably. "It was a case complete surprise. But we have pictures of them in retreat, too. We showed you those."
"Yes, you did, and there were only 2 ships in those pictures. Eyewitness reported 3 as having landed."
The commander said stiffly, "And 3 took off and retreated. There's eye witness of that also."
"But you have pictures of only 2?"
"Well, yes."
"Thank you."
Back in the office, Conway said, "Now what was that all about, Lucky?"
"I thought Captain Anton's ship might be in an interesting place. The motion pictures proved it was."
"Where was it?"
"Nowhere. That's what was interesting. His ship, the one pirate ship I would recognize, yet no ship faintly similar took part in the raid. This is strange, because Anton must be one of their very best men, or they wouldn't have sent him out after the Atlas. Or it would be strange if the truth wasn't that 30 ships attacked Ceres, and we had pictures of only 29. The missing 30th was Anton."
"I could figure that out, too," said Conway. "What of it?"
Lucky said, "The attack on the observatory was a feint. That's admitted even by the defending ships now. It was the 3 ships that attacked the airlock that were important, and they were under Anton's control. 2 of those ships joined the rest of the squadron in their retreat, a feint within a feint.
The third ship, Anton's own, the one we didn't see, continued on with the main business of the day. It left on an entirely different trajectory. People saw it lift into space, but it veered off so radically that our own ships, chasing the main body of enemy with all its might, never even caught it on film. Conway said unhappily, "You're going to say that it's not going to Ganymede." "Doesn't it follow? The pirates, however well organized, can't attack Earth and its dependencies on their own. But they can put up an excellent divisionary fight. They can keep enough terrestrial ships patrolling the endless asteroid belt to allow Syrian fleets to defeat the remainder. On the other hand, Sirius can't safely conduct a war 8 light years away from their own planet unless they can count on major help from the asteroids. After all, 8 light years amounts to 45 trillion miles. Anton's ship is speeding to Ganymede to assure them of that help and to give the word to begin the war. Without warning, of course." "If only," muttered Conway, "we could have stumbled on their Ganymede base sooner." "Even with the knowledge of Ganymede," said Henry, "we would not have known the seriousness of the situation without Lucky's 2 trips into asteroid territory." "I know. My apologies, Lucky. Meanwhile, we have very little time to do anything. We'll have to strike at the heart instantly. A squadron of ships sent to the key asteroid Lucky has told us of." "No," said Lucky. "No good." "Why do you say that?" "We don't want to start a war, even if it's with a victory. That's what they want to do. Look here, Uncle Hector, the pirate Dingo might have burned me down right there on the asteroid. Instead, he had orders to set me adrift in space. For a while I thought that was to make my death look like an accident. Now I feel it was intended to anger the Council. They were going to broadcast the fact they had killed a councilman, not hide it, goading us into a premature attack. One of the reasons for the Circe's raid might have been to ensure an added provocation." "And if we do start the war for victory?"
"Here on this side of the sun, and leave Earth on the other side, stripped of important units of the fleet, with Syrian ships waiting at Ganymede, also on the other side of the sun, I predict that would be a very costly victory. Our best bet is not to start a war, but prevent one."
"How?"
"Nothing will happen until Anton's ship reaches Ganymede. Suppose we intercept him and prevent that meeting."
"Interception is a long chance," said Conway doubtfully.
"Not if I go. The Shooting Star is faster and has better ergonomics than any ship in the fleet."
"You go?" cried Conway.
"It would be unsafe to send fleet units. The Syrians on Ganymede would have no way of being certain an attack wasn't heading their way. They'd have to take counteraction, and that would mean the very war we're trying to avoid. The Shooting Star would look harmless to them. It would be one ship. They'd stay put."
Henry said, "You're over eager, Lucky. Anton has a 12-hour head start. Even the Shooting Star can't make that up."
"You're wrong, it can. And once I catch them, Uncle Gus, I think I can force the asteroids into surrender. Without them, Sirius won't attack and there'll be no war."
They stared at him. Lucky said earnestly,
"I've come back twice now."
"Each time by half a miracle," grumbled Conway.
"The other times I didn't know what I was tackling. I had to feel my way. This time I do know. I know exactly. Look, I'll warm up the Shooting Star and make the necessary adjustments with the Ceres observatory while that's taking place. You two can get on the sub-ether to Earth. Get the coordinator to—"
Conway said, "I can take care of that, son. I've been dealing with government affairs since before you were born. And Lucky, will you take care of yourself?"
"Don't I always, Uncle Hector? Uncle Gus?"
He shook hands warmly and whirled away. Bigman scuffed the dust of Ceres disconsolately. He said, "I've got my suit on, everything."
"You can't go, Bigman," said Lucky. "I'm very sorry."
"Why not?"
"Because I'm taking a shortcut to get to Ganymede."
"So what? What kind of shortcut?"
Lucky smiled tightly. "I'm cutting through the sun."
He walked out on the field toward the Shooting Star, leaving Bigman standing there, mouth open. Jesus Christ. I'm pretty sure Bigman really wants to go on this trip now. Okay, I hope you enjoyed. The next chapter comes out Tuesday. Have a good evening. Bye.